welcome. So today we are joined with Harvey Oyer III, who is the author of the children's series Adventures of Charlie Pierce, which is about his great-great-uncle. He's also a fifth-generation Floridian and loves learning about Florida history. He also studied archaeology at Cambridge. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so the first question we'd like to ask you was, who was Guy Bradley and how would you say he affected the American culture?
So Guy Bradley was a neighbor of my family in what is today Palm Beach County. Palm Beach County did not exist at that time. It was part of Dade County, and this was the 1880s. And my family, the Pierce family, were the first permanent non-Native American settlers of what is today Palm Beach County. And they settled High Pluxo Island. And shortly thereafter, Guy Bradley and his brother Louis and their parents moved across the lake from us in what is today the town of Lantana. And so he was a childhood friend of my great-grandmother, Lily Pierce, and her brother, Charlie Pierce. And in the 1880s, they went on a plume hunting expedition together in the Florida Everglades. And it was sort of a get-rich-quick scheme because colorful bird feathers referred to as plumes sold for a lot of money because fashionable ladies in New York and Paris and London wanted to wear these in their hats. And what started originally as women wearing one or two bird feathers quickly evolved into wearing entire dead birds on their head. It was very fashionable in the late 19th century. And my Uncle Charlie talked Guy and Louis Bradley, his friends and neighbors, into going on this trip where they killed birds by the thousands to sell them for money so that women they had never met before in some other part of the world could look fashionable wearing one of these hats. And in real life, all of these young people, they were teenagers and young adults when they did this, were very profoundly affected when they realized what they had participated in. And what they participated in was the complete extinction of several species of birds and the near extinction of a number of other species of birds during this plume hunting epidemic. And to get to your question about what is the significance of Guy Bradley in American culture, it's because after participating in this bird hunting with my family as a teenager, he had such great remorse. He never wanted to kill a bird again. And as an adult, he devoted his life to protecting the birds in the very location that he had killed them by the thousands with my family just a few years earlier. So he moved away from the High Pluxo Lantana area, and he moved down to Cape Sable in what is today Everglades National Park. And he lived the rest of his life there as a game warden, protecting birds in the very location that he had slaughtered them with my family a few years earlier. And of course, in real life, it had a terrible ending because in July of 1905, he was shot through the throat and murdered by a plume bird poacher that he was attempting to arrest. And his death changed America and the world forever because it was the headline of every newspaper in this country. And for the first time in 2 decades, women who were buying these hats to be fashionable realized that they had been lied to, that these were not the molten feathers that naturally fell off of a bird, and some kind soul gathered them up and shipped them to a hat factory. In fact, the hard truth is that birds were being slaughtered by the millions so that women could wear these hats. And for the first time in 2 decades, women said, you know what, I don't want to wear a hat any longer. They're killing these beautiful birds. I've been lied to. These are not the molten feathers. And now they're killing people like Guy Bradley, an innocent man, so that I can wear this hat. And they started taking their hats off, and it started the demise of that industry. But that was not the end. America was so outraged that our friend Guy Bradley had been murdered that they demanded Congress do something about it. And Congress started to legislate in the area of protecting animals, which they had never done to that point. You know, this is 1905, over a century ago, and, you know, This was rugged individualism, man taming the land. Congress didn't tell Americans they couldn't kill animals, but they did. And they enacted the Federal Migratory Bird Treaty Act, the same federal law that still protects them today, and the same political pressure that Congress felt when Guy Bradley was murdered, the president felt, and that was Teddy Roosevelt. And Teddy Roosevelt had a very big problem because, as you know, he was a big game hunter, went on safaris in Africa and down the Amazon River, and now his voters want him to save pretty birds in Florida. But he did, exercising his constitutional executive order authority. He created America's first national wildlife refuge. Today, there's over 500 national wildlife refuges, but the first one, and it still exists, is a bird rookery in Vero Beach, Florida, called Pelican Island. And he did that in the wake of Guy Bradley's murder to placate angry voters. And it was so popular that he got lots of fan mail, and being a great politician, he seized the moment, and he created Yellowstone National Park and the National Park Service, and he goes down in history as the greatest conservationist ever sit in the White House. But one of the pivotal moments in his life that changed him from big game hunter to greatest conservationist ever sit in the White House was the murder of Guy Bradley. And if that's not a far-reaching enough impact, there was another impact of Guy Bradley's murder, and that is that some years earlier, a group of very thoughtful ladies in Boston had created a small club, sort of a housewives club, that was devoted to saving birds. And not many people joined the club. All their friends wanted to look fashionable and wear hats. That is until Guy Bradley was murdered. And after Guy Bradley was murdered, not only did ladies stop wearing the hats, they started joining the Housewives Club, which was called the Audubon Society. And it grew into one of the largest environmental organizations in the world. And if you look at the name of the national award that they give away every year, it's called the Guy Bradley Award. So if you think about that, Guy Bradley was just the teenage friend and neighbor of my great-grandmother Lily and her brother Charlie. He got talked into going onto this harebrained get-rich-quick scheme of a trip, and it profoundly changed his life. Caused him to become a wildlife conservation officer, which caused him to be killed in the line of duty. The first game warden in American history, I think, to be killed in the line of duty. And think of the ramifications of that: the Federal Migratory Bird Treaty Act, the National Wildlife Refuge System, the rise of the Audubon Society. So incredible, far-reaching impacts over a century later, all from some innocent kid that lived across the lake from us, who got talked into going on this crazy trip by my Uncle Charlie.
Well, Mr. Oyer, thank you so much for meeting with us today. Really insightful talking about Florida and Guy Bradley and just like the amazing impact he had. So thank you.
My pleasure.